Since Disney's purchase of Star Wars back in October 2012, longtime Star Wars fans haven't exactly had much to celebrate, and that's putting it mildly. That's because for over a decade, under the failed leadership of Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy, a franchise that was once considered the gold standard of cinematic entertainment has now been reduced to a bunch of embarrassing TV shows that nobody cares about, drenched in modern-day messaging that nobody wants to see. So when I saw the trailer for the new Disney Star Wars series, Skeleton Crew, a while back, my expectations from the show were already very low. I mean, you'd think that after recent Disney Star Wars failures like Ahsoka and The Acolyte, some kind of attempt would be made to lure back longtime Star Wars fans with a show that actually gets back to the basics of what once made this franchise great, like Jedi Knights that are actually heroic, and awesome battles in space. Instead, we got what appears to be a silly and dumbed-down show targeted for young children, but in spite of my many reservations, I decided to give this show a fair chance. Skeleton Crew starts off after the events of Return of the Jedi, and as usual with Disney Star Wars, everything Luke and the Rebels had achieved in that movie is null and void, because even though the Rebels formed a new republic after the Emperor was defeated, it failed at controlling all of the space pirates that have taken over most hyperspace routes, and after we see a stupid title that explains this, we see a group of space pirates board a ship led by a masked man that sounds just like Jude Law, in a scene that's pretty much a one-for-one carbon copy of the opening scene of Star Wars A New Hope, or as I like to call it, Star Wars. The thing is, while the original scene of Vader boarding the Rebels' ship from 1977 is a brilliantly executed iconic piece of cinema, here in Skeleton Crew, the tension and stakes couldn't be any lower. That's because you don't have a figure like Leia on this ship who you're rooting for right out the gate, and since I haven't really been introduced to anybody on this ship, I don't really care about any of them or what happens to them. As far as I'm concerned, this entire ship could crash and burn right now, and I wouldn't even care. In any case, the pirates get mad at their leader since there's no money aboard the ship, so they start a mutiny against him. Then we jump to a completely different setting where some kid is reenacting a scene from Spaceballs.
No, please, leave me alone. No, you are mine.
And this kid, who moving forward I will refer to as Little Twerp, is our main protagonist. Now, before you start attacking me for being a terrible person, I want to make something absolutely clear. I don't have anything against the child actor or any of the other child actors on this show. As young aspiring actors, they were offered roles on this show and they took them, and that's totally understandable because you have to start your career somewhere, even if it is on this lousy TV show. Anyhow, Little Twerp seems to be living in suburban 1980s America, but set within the Star Wars universe. Yeah, don't think about it. And now we're introduced to Little Twerp's low-energy father, played by an actor that delivers his lines about as enthusiastically as a man buying wet wipes at his local pharmacy. Obviously, with him being a male father figure on a Disney show, he doesn't seem to pay much attention to his son. While the writers likely wanted him to serve a similar role to the single mother in E.T., the difference is, in E.T. the mom had to work long hours to support 3 kids, whereas here, the father has only 1 kid and is somehow much more distant and much less likable. We're then introduced to Little Twerp's friend, Max Rebo Jr., who the showrunners claim is a completely different species from Max Rebo in Return of the Jedi, and I suppose that this blue elephant is just different enough so that they don't have to pay George Lucas royalties or something. The 2 boys are on a robo-taxi that takes them to school when they see a little girl boss and her sidekick, Jodie LaForge, riding a hoverbike. Once in school, Little Twerp isn't paying attention in class, but then Stacey Ermintrout from Better Call Saul shows up and explains to all the kids that they're going to be getting a career assessment exam where it'll be decided by the state what their career will be in the future. So basically, this town operates like communist China, but in a Star Wars setting, because who doesn't want to see more communism in Disney programming? Hey, comrades! Apparently, though, Little Twerp dreams of being a Jedi Knight or something, which is super annoying and cringe. Later, the 2 girls have a problem with their hoverbike, which they can't seem to fix, so they talk about getting a new space converter. Remember space converters?
Hi, maybe.
Little girl boss enters her home, and it turns out that the communist lady from Better Call Saul is actually her mother, and in a surprise twist, it turns out that she's a feminist too. I have to feel bad for this actress though. At one point she was on one of the best shows ever made, and now she's on one of the dumbest. Next, we have low-energy father, who we find out is a widow putting his son to sleep while acting like a douche for no apparent reason. Little Twerp then continues to play video games at night, and the next day, he ends up missing his bus, which means he could be late for his communism exam at school. Now I have a lot of questions about this scene. I mean, couldn't Max Rebo Jr. tell that robo-taxi droid to stop and let the Little Twerp board? Why is he standing there like a clueless blue elephant? Anyhow, the only option left for the Little Twerp is to take his hoverbike and ride to school. Somehow, though, the Little Twerp ends up in the forest, just like in Return of the Jedi. Remember Return of the Jedi?
Hi, maybe.
And due to his tardiness, little Twerp misses his communism exam, which is a real issue. But wait a minute, why did Twerp need to go through the forest in order to get to the school? Couldn't he have just quickly gone the same route as the bus on the actual road? Yeah, don't think about that either. Next, the kid falls down a cliff and believes he's discovered a Jedi temple when some random droid shows up and takes him to school. When he arrives, little girl boss is already sitting next to the principal's office, acting like a dude and being all arrogant and cocky with little Twerp. Again. And oddly, his father is also at the school. I mean, if this communism test was so important, why didn't the father make sure his son was awake in the morning and didn't miss the bus to school? Also, why is the father not even letting his son speak here? He missed a bus and got into an accident where he fell off a cliff. Wouldn't this father at least want to know a little more about what happened to his kid? Anyhow, low-energy father tells little Twerp to study and then leaves. Naturally, little Twerp doesn't want to study, so he goes to Max Rebo Jr.'s house where his siblings are playing a game last seen in the Star Wars Christmas special, which is quite odd, but hey, at least these kids weren't watching naughty virtual reality videos like Chewie's grandfather.
Yes.
Little Twerp then takes Max Rebo Jr. to go see the Jedi temple he found, and what do you know? Little Girl Boss and Jodie LaForge are there too, being arrogant and taunting the boys. Again. And in another unexpected development, it turns out that the top secret Jedi temple is actually a spaceship, and after Little Twerp presses a lot of random buttons, the ship takes off. Little Twerp's father goes looking for his son and finally finds him, only to see him take off with the ship. Then the kids go into hyperspace and the first episode ends. The next episode starts off with the kids getting out of hyperspace, realizing that they're lost, and not able to get back to their home planet. It then turns out that there's some kind of grumpy droid on board that knows how to operate the ship, but he only follows the orders of his captain. So little girl boss then tells grumpy droid that she's killed his captain, and that she's the captain now, and the grumpy droid immediately agrees with her. The kids then tell the droid to take the ship back to their home planet of At-Atten, but he can't seem to find it as it's not registered anywhere, so he suggests that they all go to a spaceport where they could ask people for directions. Meanwhile, back on the communist 80s planet, low-energy father is telling some droid that his son has disappeared, with about as much conviction as a man who just got a full body massage at his local red light district. On the ship itself, Max Rebo Jr. and Little Twerp end up finding skeletons in a scene that seems like it was directly lifted from the Goonies. Once the kids arrive at Quasi-Mos Eisley Cantina, they run into Captain EO and then do very dumb things that attract the attention of evil pirates. And just when it looks like the kids are done for, Grumpy Droid arrives to protect them. At this point though, the pirates that we saw at the beginning of episode 1, along with Steve Urkel, take Grumpy Droid out of commission and put all the kids in a jail cell. That's where they meet Jude Law, who can't wait to cash his paycheck for being on this crappy show. He then agrees to help the kids escape if they let him onto their ship, and they naturally agree. Then Jude Law seemingly uses the Force to grab the jail keys, which is weird because if he's a Force user, then why didn't he use it sooner? Why did he wait until the kids arrived? Yeah, don't think about that either. And then finally, this episode ends. And after watching these two episodes, I can honestly say that unfortunately, Skeleton Crew is a silly kids show that really has nothing to do with the Star Wars universe at all, and is more of a ripoff of Goonies and E.T., but in space. And by focusing on kids in an 80s-like American suburb, it's pretty clear that Lucasfilm had hoped to recreate the type of success Netflix had with Stranger Things. The problem is, as opposed to the snoozy Skeleton Crew, Stranger Things is a much better show that appeals to the imagination and wonder of children, while also providing enough mystery, grit, and nostalgia to attract an adult audience. Skeleton Crew ultimately suffers from many of the same issues that all the other Disney Star Wars movies and shows suffer from. For starters, its writing is rather poor, and every episode has a few isolated story beats drowned in a bunch of boring and useless filler. To make matters worse, true to the Kathleen Kennedy brand, there's once again a clear attempt to weaken any male character here in comparison to any female character on the show. Now, if this was the first time this had happened during the Disney Star Wars era, I suppose it wouldn't be a big deal, but at this point, this type of agenda is just always baked in, every single time. And you know what? Not only am I tired of it as a viewer, I reject Disney's strategy of pushing the same message on kids over and over again, and I'm willing to bet that this is just the tip of the iceberg here, and that more anti-patriarchy, anti-male messaging will pop up in future episodes of this show, because it always does, and we're only 2 episodes in. And while I know some people, even friends of mine that I respect, that'll tell me that it's fine to create a Star Wars show for little kids like Skeleton Crew, I beg to differ. It is my opinion that Lucasfilm simply haven't earned the right to make this show. They've given their own customers the middle finger time and time again for over a decade now, and I got no patience for their nonsense. If they made good movies and good shows consistently, community, and at one point wanted to try something that's more targeted for younger kids with a different creative approach, it would have been fine. But after everything they've done, as far as I'm concerned, Lucasfilm and Kennedy currently have zero fan goodwill for me. And to me, this show is a dreadful, annoying, slow-paced stinker, which I would give a score of 35 out of 100 to, which means that this Skeleton Crew show is another big fail for Disney Star Wars. But if you enjoy receiving honest reviews like this one, please make sure to like, subscribe, and follow my channel, because the mainstream media will never tell you the truth about these things, and I always will. Thanks for watching, my friends. Thank you, and good day.